at KSMO Radio. Time for our Spotlight on Salem Memorial Hospital, brought to you by Inman Insurance. And we have hospital CEO Wayne Reed with us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
It's the first full day of summer.
Is that what this is?
Today is the first
Oh,
full
gosh.
day of summer.
Well,
Kicked
good.
in at 9:58 yesterday morning, and everybody was just partying. I just parade something down the street.
Well, that's what that was. I thought that was because you were here.
No,
I understand
no.
they did a parade for you.
I wish they did, but no, they didn't.
They did close.
Yeah, they did a nice job.
They did a nice
and I
job.
appreciated that. That was very nice. Very nice. But anyway, I know you're on a little bit of a time crunch, so we're not going to BS around too much
Good.
today. But always enjoy talking to you whenever I
Always
get a
glad to
chance
be
to,
here.
and I know you're very busy. So let's get to a little bit of a recap of Tuesday's Board of Directors
Mm-hmm.
meeting. A lot of different things are happening at the hospital, and I know in your administrator's report it gets longer and longer and longer.
Lots of stuff going on.
So tell us a little bit about some of the things, so we'll get through this fairly quickly so that you can get back to the hospital because you have a meeting. The National Electronic Injury Surveillance System. Tell us a little bit about that.
We're looking at there's a as you know there's a federal program that initiates recalls for items that causes injury in America,
Right.
cribs or strollers
Car
or
seats.
bicycles, car seats, those sort of things. And so the way they get that is that they get that out of a pool of people around America that report all injuries to them, and it's anonymized data. It goes up, and so we've been contacted by a group that will essentially give us a grant to help fund pulling that data, and we're working with some folks inside the ED, which is where most of that would come from,
Sure.
ED and nursing, to see how we could affect that.
When would that grant be issued? You have no idea?
No, still early. Still early.
All right, all in the planning stages.
Still in the planning
All
stages.
right, very good. The Torch Grant application, that has been submitted. Tell us a little bit about the Torch
So
Grant.
the Torch Grant is, so if you're familiar with our Delta project, which is sort of a way for us to work in the community to advance healthcare initiatives inside the community, the way I describe the Torch Grant is sort of the Delta Grant on steroids. It provides additional funding to be able to help bring people in and other resources, and so and frankly, it's a pilot project. So we would be helping to define what those initiatives are and how those will get rolled out, and we should know by the end of this month if we were accepted. But that will be the initial phase of that is a $6 million grant, a $3 million grant spread out over 6 hospitals. And Tabitha put that, Tiffin put that together and did a good job.
And Tiffin has left, but
Yes.
she did a great job while she
And
was there.
She's gone but not forgotten.
No, not
She's
forgotten,
still
but-
doing. She's still doing a little work for us, and as we transition in the new person,
Sure.
she's going to help bring that person up to speed. So she was just did yeoman work for
Right,
us.
and it's always good to have Tabitha there. She's the steadying influence, right?
Yep, she's very good.
Yeah, she is. She's great. All right, HB 1239. You guys met with Phelps Health tonight.
Yep.
Explain what that is.
So there is a rule inside the state of Missouri that says if you operate a district hospital, that frankly you can't operate outside of your district. And as you know, there is a Phelps Health function inside our district
Sure.
that was started before I got here, and House Bill 1239 sought to remove the restriction for that, or to limit it, so that the county commissioners could decide whether or not it was acceptable to have cross district competition. That did not pass through the House this session, so we met with him to find out how that had gotten initiated, and then how we should respond to that. And then we had further conversations about that in closed
Okay,
session.
very good. All right, so MHA licensing survey.
We do
gotta
that
do it every
and
year,
we
right?
presented that and sent it up, and that's the reason we put that together and told folks about it is it's a big deal. There's a lot of information that goes
There's
into
a
that.
ton of information. And MHA is Missouri Hospital Association, for those who do not know. Had a good golf tournament.
Had a great golf tournament. Did you win?
I didn't get a chance to participate. I actually was out of town.
My gosh, how could we do it without you?
I sponsor Hole in One.
I know you did. And
Nobody got one.
Somebody
Did they?
got very, very close.
Well,
They
I've
hit
had-
the pin.
We've had to pay off a couple times.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yep. Somebody hit the pin, and they were, and it ended up probably 3 inches away from
Wow. I wish they'd have got it.
I'll have
They're that close. I wish they'd have got it.
I'll have to. I know the person who did it. I'll get them. I'll send a picture of the. I'll send a picture of the flag to you.
Wow. Yeah, I've done that where I've hit the pin and you think, man, it just drops straight down.
No,
it hits and just goes off and it trickles and behind.
Yeah.
Anyway, gets a killer.
When I golf, the pin's not afraid.
And the hole isn't either, right?
Yeah, if you want to stand on a golf course in the safest spot, stand right next to the hole.
Stand on the green next to the hole.
That's
there
right,
you go.
Yeah.
Unless there's a lightning storm, you're going to be.
You'll be pretty safe from my ball.
All right, very good. Dialysis has received 90 facility scores.
Yep.
Very good.
Very good. They were very proud of that. We met with Dr. Garcia and Jody, and they were very proud of themselves, and they have every right to be.
Yeah.
It's part of a whole history of things that we do at the hospital where we provide great service. So.
It's very good, and it's very key. And there's not a lot of dialysis units around anymore. West Plains shut theirs down, and so this is one of the few options you have if you travel.
Yeah, and not only that, so not only other services, but a lot of people are being able to do it at home. So it really puts a squeeze on those people who need to have it at a center and can't do it at home because there's fewer of those resources. So we're battling hard to be able to make sure we can continue to provide that service.
Very good. Well, we put everything behind it. That's a great center, and they do a fantastic job down there, really do. CPSI upgrade, we talked a little bit about that coming on for Med-Surg. Not in yet, but it will be sometime next month?
Mm-hmm. In the middle of July, we're going to put that in place. Jeremy, our intrepid IT specialist who's doing an awesome job, is working with Ashley, our director, CNO, to make sure that people are trained for that. That should really streamline a lot of the processes that nurses have to do in the Med-Surg unit. So I'm really looking forward to giving them that tool.
Very good. But a new lab interface is now working.
Only took a year. Only took a year. That interface was approved before I got here, and then we've had a couple of lab leadership changes that sort of got in the way of that. But now we have that, and what that allows us to do is there's a certain percentage of tests in any hospital that you have to send out, and what we were having to do is whenever those came back, we were having to manually update those in the chart. And now, as soon as that result is done at the third-party lab, it automatically updates in their chart, so we don't have that gap in time.
Very good. Well, you were talking about Jeremy, and you're talking about the IT department. They actually had a nice presentation at this board meeting, and kind of updating the board on all the different things that are going on. And there's a bunch, isn't there?
Yeah, we try to bring a director every board meeting to talk about what's happening in their area, to sort of showcase their area so the board understands, and frankly the community understands what they're doing. When I got here, there was big concerns over the telephone system, and there was a concern that the telephone system was actually impacting our efficiencies in the clinic, and that it was having impacts on the hospital, and it was unstable, and it was archaic. And Jeremy found a vendor that was unbelievably inexpensive, but that has expanded our capacity unbelievably. And the estimated time to go live was 3 months, and he had it done in 2.5. I mean, he and James did yeoman work to do that. Now we have a full-featured phone system that has more features than we know how to use right now. So we're going through the growing pains of trying to figure out how to do that. So if the folks in the listening audience call in, please listen to the prompts and don't just hit 0 around that, because we've got part of the call center program is it will actually direct you to where you need to go a lot better than the old one did.
Very good, very good. So a lot of different things going on. The phone system was one of them, but there's other things going on too. Got the wireless infrastructure upgrades, and we had 6 servers need to be always upgraded.
Yeah, so we had, and part of the Delta grant funding has allowed us to do a lot of those things. But Jeremy spearheaded the ability to, I think, take us from 15 to 60 wireless access points in the building, and what that allows you to do is you're walking through the building with your phone. Obviously, it allows you to connect, but more importantly, a lot of the equipment that we use accesses the networks wirelessly, and so this will reduce the amount of cold spots that we have and increase the signal strength as we go through the building, and frankly bring us up to current. A lot of the equipment that we have is old and outdated, and that's not just for aesthetics. Those machines, as they get older, they get slower, and they get harder to support from a cybersecurity standpoint.
Yep.
So if you don't upgrade those appropriately, then you leave yourself vulnerable for a whole lot of bad things, and they're less efficient.
And that's hardware and software. So, it's both. So I just saw a couple of the notes in here replacing 50 PCs and 15 laptops. That's a lot of different computers to replace, and there's still more to go. There's still a lot more in that hospital. I don't think people really understand the entire scope of the hospital, how large it is, and how much equipment and electronics there actually is inside.
Yeah, whenever I interviewed here and I called my wife, and as I was driving through, first of all, not only is any hospital complex, but for a critical access hospital, this hospital is very complex. Most critical access hospitals don't have a dialysis unit. They don't have an ambulance service. They don't have a medical office building that's as big, that has a clinic as big as we have.
Right.
So there's a whole lot that goes into our hospital that other critical access hospitals don't have. So it's very complex.
And all the different integrations that are going on at the same time. So you're changing out computers, you're integrating different softwares, and a lot of times when you make those changes to new computers, that integration of the software is a lot easier.
Much easier. But interestingly, every time you make those connections, it's expensive.
Oh yeah,
it costs money. Nobody wants to do it for free. It's we give you this piece of software, or we sell you this piece of software. Well, you already have this piece of software. Both of them will work magically, but they won't work together until you pay $60,000 for the ability for them to talk.
Yeah, for the patch. You got to pay for the patch.
Got to pay for the connection.
So a lot of different things, but there's still a lot of different things that Jeremy is doing. And it is pretty incredible when you look at the initiatives, and there's going to be more improvements as time goes on, a lot more of those, but a lot of different things are going through. Delta funding helping pay for some of that stuff, but also moving from the Mila intranet to SharePoint. That was a big part of what the hospital really needed to get done.
Yeah, so Milo is sort of our internal third-party website that helps us communicate. And at the time they put it in, it was fine, but it lacks some integration and it's a little clumsy. SharePoint is a part of Microsoft Office, which we already have, so we can lose that license to SharePoint to Milo, and we can integrate it with Microsoft, so we can use Teams integration, we can use all the integrations that come native with Microsoft, and be able to have a better product facing our staff, so we can do event reporting, and that stuff sort of moves into our digital life right now, which is inside Microsoft.
And as Microsoft upgrades and Milo upgrades, sometimes those don't talk to each other.
Well.
And that becomes more and more of a problem. All right, let's go into some of the old business that we've been talking about. The drain, and we got the clinic, we got the architect stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the drain. I know we still have an issue with our drain.
Yeah, we still have an issue with our drain. The good news is it's not any worse, and it's probably going to celebrate a birthday before we get it fixed, because it's been there a while. It has been in there for a while, and it's been struggling for probably a big portion of its life.
Imagine
there,
15 to 20 years.
But the update there is that we we are right now sitting with $1 million approved for the state. We're waiting on our governor to sign it. Yep. And I'm holding my breath until he signs it to make sure that it stays there. I have every reason to believe that it will. And then sort of to cross-pollinate something that's on another bullet point, Clark with the USDA came down, and we had a very good conversation on the morning of the board meeting to talk to him about the potential for long-term loans from the USDA, so you can get long-term loans at low interest rates.
Or no interest in some cases.
In some cases. And there are some grants there, but those tend to be smaller patch grants. But it will give us the ability to provide the matching funds that we need to be able to get the $1 million from the state.
So could the state be used as the matching funds for the USDA?
No, the USDA would be used for matching funds for the state.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had
one way or the other.
Yep, we had that conversation with him. So that would mean that we would get a half of those projects, and there's several of them in there in the clinic and the floor have been in part of that package that we asked for from the state, and then there's other things like roofing projects. So we put together our request for the at the state level was not operations; it was all capital improvements,
Right,
so
right.
parking lot renovations and stuff like that.
A lot of things to keep up at a hospital, isn't there?
Lots, lots, and
You know,
none of it's
and-
cheap.
No, well, we kind of already went through a water issue. We kind of went through an electric issue, and it just comes with time. The hospital's not a brand new hospital, and you're going to have these things that have to be replaced and updated.
Which bridges us to the other conversation that we were having, and I know that probably Don Babb, when he was here, talked to you about that, and we've been talking about it, is that at some point that building needs to be replaced. And so we had, and the way that probably the most effective way to do that is to have somebody in the community who wants to donate about $25 million, but short of. Go ahead, start, Stan. We'll name it after you. But
Thank you.
but the second way to do that is to do that long-term USDA funding, and there's the good news is that the way that the finances work, you can do that and amortize, and the way the amortization works and the way that critical access gets funded, you can do that and then sort of get essentially reimbursed for the building of the new hospital. And so, and we are, I'm not saying that we're ready to present that to the board yet, but
Well, you have to get started.
it's getting closer.
Yeah,
It's getting closer.
You have to get started. You got to lay the groundwork.
It's far closer than it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Oh well, it probably was just a pipe dream a year and a half ago.
It's far closer, but we were having legitimate discussions about what that looks like in the not too distant future.
Well, sooner or later, everything has a life. And
Mine's getting shorter and shorter.
well, whose doesn't, right? But anyway, very good. But a lot of good stuff going in there. Strategic planning update. Looking at a surgeon. Do I see?
Yep, we're trying to. We've had some conversations about how do we add additional surgical services there, because we think that would be good for the community. We know we got Dr. Voigt who does some work there, and we value his participation, but we want to expand that, and
He's going to retire someday.
I didn't think he was ever going to retire.
Well, maybe he will not. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But
If he's figured that out,
yeah, he's a great guy,
Yeah.
by the way, and I really appreciate it.
we appreciate.
He does a
appreciate
great job for the hospital. Very good.
So that, and then there's some other services that we're looking at in the community, and one of those is occupational health. As we've been working with the Doe Run contract, and that's going extremely well. I think they're very happy with what we're doing now. Chrissy and the team there have done phenomenal work to roll that out. But as we were doing that, and we were talking to Walmart about the ability to do some work with them and supply DOT physicals for them, as one of the things that requires for us to do that is we have to have, there's a software that they require us to use, but that software is global. And so if we use that, then we could potentially use that for other clients. And there's lots of clients that have reached out to Chrissy in the area. And so what has started as an initiative with Doe Run has sort of and then sort of a conversation with DOT Physicals with U.S. Foods and Walmart has really become the fledgling start of an occupational health program, which will be very good for the area and very good for the facility.
You got a lot of logging truckers too.
A lot of logging. There's lots of companies here who need occupational health.
Very good, very good. All right. So let's anything. I don't see anything really else in old business that you want to talk about, or do you just want to touch on anything there?
No.
Okay.
Whatever.
Very good. All right. Let's move on to hospital transportation. This was brought up at the meeting a little bit about Phelps Health providing transportation. You want to touch on that or enlighten us?
So I will tell you that there was sort of some mixed review of that at the board meeting. I think that it's certainly something that we want to look at. Does it make sense? It is. First of all, we have to be able to figure out what sort of demand there is. I know there's a local funded transportation service that we don't want to compete with.
Right.
So we want to make sure that there's a demand that they can't meet that we would help with. And it's not a simple thing to put in place, because you can't just unless you've got a chauffeur's license, you and I can't just jump in a van and start carrying folks around. So we'd have to look at what the pieces are. But if that is something that would benefit the community, and that it makes sense, and we're not competing with someone else, then we can do that. And I think that, frankly, that's one of the things that between Delta and the Torch Grant, if we got that would be something that we could potentially roll up into that.
Very good. Well, we had an interim CFO that was attending the meeting via Zoom, correct?
Via Zoom, yeah. She was a little under the weather, Kayla Chamberlain, and she's extremely sharp. And has been very helpful to us in the short term. She's doing about a day a week with us in person, and she's been doing obviously Teams meetings or Zoom meetings and support via phone and email. She's been awesome.
And the reason I bring that up, signature cards have to be signed, and because we got a couple changeovers, you have to. The board has to approve those people.
Yep.
And Dalen and she were both approved. Yep. Very good. Some foundation account changes.
Same thing.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Just the same thing?
Yep.
All right. So we had a couple of purchases, needed a new air conditioner.
Yep. And they had, just before I arrived, they had approved and purchased a air conditioner for the long-term care center, and it just arrived. So it took about a year for it to get here.
Yeah.
And so there's another one that's over the roof of our building that's on administration, and it supports the libraries in the front of the and that entire front of the hospital. It went out and back on and back off, and so it is trying to die, and Todd and his group have done spectacular work of keeping it working. But if we get that and the reason that the long-term care is important is because if we can get those two done at the same time, we can rent one crane and crane them up there at the same time.
Yeah, these are not your outside 3-ton air conditioners.
No, they're big.
they're big.
And they sit on the roof.
Yeah, they're heavy. And does there have to be any roof work done underneath?
I don't think so.
Hope?
There could be some. There's a line item in there for duct work. There may need some duct work to make the connection, but we won't know until it gets here.
Possibly having to reroute some of the piping there, depending upon the unit you get.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so
because sometimes the 50-year-old air conditioners don't match the current air conditioners.
What?
Sometimes.
I don't believe that. Okay, so we had looks like some software purchase for radiology.
Yep. No, actually, no. It's a software and hardware upgrade for our ultrasound unit. Our ultrasound unit, I think, was on version 2, and we are upgrading to version 5.4. That'll improve the resolution of the equipment. It gets us an ultrasound probe and does some software to it, and it will extend the useful life of that machine dramatically.
All right, very good. Okay, so it was budget time. I know that the Finance Committee had met a few times and put together an operating budget. There were some, obviously with every budget there's assumptions made.
Right.
And when the board discussed it, they weren't satisfied with what was presented.
So we're going to be meeting this over the course of this month.
But that's the purpose of the board. They look at it, the Finance Committee is making a recommendation. What they say is just not etched in stone.
Right.
This is what they see, and then they bring it back to the board, and if there's questions, that's where the discussion comes in,
right.
And that's
So we tabled it, and
nobody should ever take personal offense to it. It's what they see. It's the numbers that are generated, and you as well as and I know with this COVID and everything that's happened in the last 3, 4, 5 years, budgeting has just been a nightmare.
it is yes, at least a nightmare. And then when you wake up, it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things. Obviously, when you look at a budget, you have to know what the plans are for the next year. Not only the next year, but really for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So when you start to put all those numbers together, looking at operations, looking at changes you want to make, looking at things we've already talked about, that you're looking at some money to get done, and kitchen drain, things of that nature, you don't have any answers yet.
You make a lot of assumptions.
And that's why I say you make all these assumptions. And people say, well, how do you do that? I said, a budget's just a best guess estimate. That's all it is.
And I will also say that that what has made it a little more difficult here is that we've had some instability in our finance department. And so, we've sort of transitioned through some financial players there. And so when I came out of HCA, which is the largest healthcare corporation in America, they didn't do a zero-based budget where they went back and said, okay, accounting, I want you to start counting how many pencils you're going to need next year. They just do it based on what you used last year.
Right.
And then you have to justify if what last year made sense. And if it did, then you adjust that based on what the things are going to be going forward. So, it's a budget based on a history, and so then what you do is you start judging whether the assumptions that you've made make sense.
But as you as well as I know, all that COVID stuff that used to have to be on the gowns and things of that nature. If you look at the number of gowns that had to be bought at that time and disposed of, you can't use that as a budget because that's no longer in effect.
Well, and so the other thing is that makes it difficult is that we're improved. So we don't have a linear path for anything. Our expense utilization has been coming down because we've transitioned to HPG pricing.
Right.
So we've had that. So we don't have a stable pricing model there.
Right.
We also our volume since the end of last year has been growing up. Well, that's a trend that's still trending up. So how far is that trend going to go? And so and what part of the trend do you use for next year? And then, what are the things that are going to happen in the market that's going to affect that trend?
Sure.
How's the occupational health that we're doing?
Exactly.
What's that going to do? So you have to make you make some gross assumptions, and then you modify that throughout the year as things change.
Right. So I'm going to ask you, does the Finance Committee not only it's preparing the budget for the next fiscal year, but they're looking at fiscal year 25, 26, 27 as well when they get together.
Yeah, and that's how we can start projecting into the future.
Because you can't do it any other way.
Yeah.
If you don't do that. So, and that has been a challenge for the last few years with COVID. What do you base it upon? Like you just talked about pencils. Okay, we got a straight line of pencil. But we only had 3 people in accounting. Now we've grown. We've got 5 people in accounting. Can I get 2 more pencils?
Yeah.
That's how you have to justify it.
Yep.
But not only that, but then there's new things coming onto the horizon all the time. New technology, new different ways of doing things, and the hospital's done a great job of keeping up to date.
Yeah, but there is a sort of a baseline. There's sort of a baseline gestalt that you sort of know what you need, and to your point a minute ago, is it's a best guess estimate of what you're going to need in the future, and a lot of that is based on history, but it's also based on your own internal intuition about what is going to happen in the, you have to make adjustments based on what is going to happen in the market, what's going to happen in your physician practices, what's going to happen in the hospital, where are you driving out cost in other places.
Sure.
So it's sort of a mixed bag.
So I don't want me to put you on the spot, but you start talking about building a new hospital. So when you start making plans for long-term improvements, you have to weigh that against that long-term investment into the replacement of a building, too, don't you?
Mm-hmm. So we had that conversation. That was one of the conversations.
And I wasn't included?
Yeah, well, we could have come. But that's one of the conversations that we had with Clark with USDA is that, let's say that we suddenly looked at the financials and we said, wow, we really need to invest in a new hospital. And the board says, yes, next month. Well, it's going to take 3 to 5 years before we start having a hospital. So we have to make sure that the building that we have is functional to be able to support us during that time. So how much money do we spend here to be able to support that? So one of the questions that we have as we're working to support the current hospital is how much extended useful life can we get out of that so that we don't invest here things that we can't move. So if I buy a bed or a stretcher in this hospital, that's fine, because when we build a new hospital, we can pick it up and move it.
Right.
But the kitchen drain, for instance, is not going to move.
No, it's
and
not going to move.
If that building becomes a parking lot, and I'm not saying that it would, but if it did, well, then we'd have a $500,000 drain sitting under a brand new parking lot that will never get used. So you've got to figure out what sunk costs make sense to be able to keep the building going.
And that's exactly my point, because that's where it really becomes a juggling game, because depending upon what you find out with USDA and what you find out here and what you find out, you're rounding all the pieces together to get that strategy to move forward, and that's the hardest part.
Well, and frankly, you're going to get that wrong some.
What?
You're going to get that wrong some. Sometimes
you always do.
Sometimes
things change.
Things change, or your assumptions that because your assumptions were wrong, not because you're incompetent, but because you can't have all the available information about what's going to happen in the future. Colin Powell, who's a pretty smart fellow, once said that you develop an 80% plan and then you execute because you can't figure out what's going to happen in the latter 20% anyway.
Yeah.
So just get to that, execute, make your plan, move forward, and then Semper Gumby, be flexible as you roll it out.
Gumby?
You're probably not old enough to remember
No, I
Gumby.
know Gumby. I just have never heard it in terms that way. But I like it, though.
Semper
That's
Gumby, ever flexible.
Semper Gumby. Yeah, no doubt about it. So anyhow, so the capital budget will be reworked. There'll be a workshop held, correct?
Yeah.
And then they'll come back with in the next meeting with another
expect
proposed
so.
budget.
We
All right,
expect so.
very good. Another positive month for the hospital.
Very.
And usually May is not
Not
a positive month.
So we had, and I told you when it was 2 months, and I told you when it was 3 months, 4 months. I'll tell you when it's 5 months. We're going to crow about it when it's 5 months in a row because that's a big deal.
It is a
from
big
where
deal.
we were, and we're going to crow about it because it may not make it to 6 or it may not make it to 7 because we're coming into sort of the difficult times. This is, right now our volume is not what it has been because it's the summer and people don't want to be in the hospital right now, and frankly, some of the things that cause people to need health care don't happen as much in the summer. So, the fact that we can come into May and if you will notice there, the operating our operating losses right now for the year are right at $1 million. Last year at this time they were $3.5 million. So, and a lot of that is on the strength of the last 6 or 7 months. So we didn't start out quite that good at the first part of the fiscal year. So back to that budgeting, there's been improvement, and the question is how long will the improvement come? When can we get a surgeon? What will occupational health do? But the fact that we've been able, and that team, who I congratulate all the time, have been able to help that hospital turn from a $3.5 million loss to a $1 million loss. And the budget that you just saw that was proposed actually proposes us cash flowing next year, which is
It's amazing,
incredible.
And when you talk about it, and this is you can go back to the hospital financials from years ago. Usually May, June, July, August, those are the toughest months. Starting mid to late September, you start to see things change.
Yeah.
So when you figure that normally a hospital could look at about 8 out of 12 months of having a positive cash flow, and that'd have been a good assumption.
Good assumption. And so I've been doing this forever. You watch that and you see that climb up out of in September, October, November, December, and then sometimes January hovers, and then February, because it's a short month and it's on the backside of deductibles and everything, it just starts to collapse. And while we've done that, and we will probably be forced to do this again this year because of some of the changes in finance. Normally what you would do is you would try to adjust your budget based on the month to be able to match those. We probably won't for a couple of reasons. First of all, because of the issues around finance, but two, because we don't have really good statistics to be able to sort of figure out how to vary them. I expect next year's budget will be able to do that a little better. But so I say that to say that we are beating a budget this year, this time, based on what are an average number that includes our positive months. So I'm very impressed with what the hospital's doing today.
So another thing is too, you came on back in September, late August you got hired, and then kind of had your meet and greet in September. When that happens, and you've implemented some different things that you have wanted to see done, and when you do that, you get that additional data that you're now. I think most of the department heads now have the additional data you've kind of brought in on your own. That's also going to help in the formulation of a different budget going forward too, isn't it?
And a different mindset. I don't think that our department heads were used to running their individual departments like a little business.
That's the way it should be.
And they are.
Yeah.
They're doing, and they have adapted to that very well. And again, that's not a switch that you turn on. That's a process that you enable. And that will, and frankly, when we get some more stability in our finance department, I'm used to the finance department helping to drive that business relationship inside the departments. But that mindset change has helped a great deal.
Well, if you don't treat it like a business, you're not going to move forward, because if people just go in with the idea that I just have to show up for work. No, this part of the hospital, this part of the hospital, this part of the hospital, all are separate entities working together as a common unit.
So I will tell you that there's two things that have been very encouraging to me that are, one is funny and the other one's really cool. Is that now I'm beginning to find folks who find stuff in their budget that's wrong, or in their accounting that's wrong. That's good, because that happens in every hospital.
Sure.
But the other one is, wait a minute, I'm in the lab. Why did I get charged for that? That should be over there, because now people are seeing it.
Oh, yeah.
And in the other days, they wouldn't have. And then the other thing that I'm seeing as I go through the department is I'm seeing people with to-do lists up on their marker boards. I'm seeing people with, if you walk into Chrissy's office, she's got, a history of what's happened in the month, so we can track it on a daily
Sure.
basis. So people are now thinking about that. If you go down to our finance department, we've got metrics posted that I didn't tell anybody to do, but they're doing it. And I was talking to the radiology folks the other day, and they were encouraged about, whenever their volume is off, they get a little nervous. When their volume comes up, they're like, it's a mindset change that will evolve over time.
You may not have done it directly, but in what you needed for reports and things, that helped generate that, and then they have to find a way to get those reports, get that information to you.
And it is interesting, because I know this happens because it happened to me when I was a director. Whenever the boss would come in and ask for something, you didn't know what he meant. You start talking to your colleagues and go, "What are we doing? How are you doing that?"
Yeah.
And it sort of inspires an esprit de corps where people rise up to meet the challenge.
But they do it their own way, and that's the key. They do it their own way, so that everybody in that department, they know exactly how it's done.
Yep.
They can all figure it out. Very good. So let's just take a real quick look at some of the numbers, and I know that we're going to be right here, but inpatient admissions, pretty good for the month
Solid.
of May.
Strong.
I think
Strong.
Inpatient census days, 437. That's pretty high. In the swing bed, over 100. That's always good, too.
Yep.
Keep people in town. Outpatient registration, 1738, way over budget, way over last year. And cardiopulmonary is just about where it's supposed to be, maybe a little under budget,
And
but
I'm
about
not
where
sure
it was
I
last
still
year.
trust that number just yet. And that's another thing that I'm not entirely certain that all of our numbers match where they're supposed to be, and that's one of the things that Kayla's looking at. So I'm not entirely certain that and part of the reason that is because some of what he gets in his numbers are affected by what our inpatient volume is.
Okay. Lab tests are up.
Yep.
Radiology's up. Rehab treatments up. Up. Surgical procedures over 40. I don't remember the last time we had over 40.
I don't know that Amy remembers it.
No, I don't remember that. When I saw that, I thought 40. 32, 34 maybe. 40, 41. Yeah. I'm impressed. Very impressed.
Well, one of the things that Clark asked is he asked what our market penetration was, and I said, well, prior years it has been in the 24-25%. The last quarter that we looked at, it was 36-37. So we've taken a 50% market share growth. 12% actual, but net effective, about a 50% year-over-year improvement.
In a short time.
In a short time.
And keep making improvements. Emergency room, 691. That's about normal-ish.
But again...
But for May, that's high.
Not just it's May, but we're also staying open later in the clinic.
That's true.
And we have weekend clinic days. And some of those people who are going to our weekend clinic in those later times would have normally gone to the ER.
Oh, that's
so they're getting
absolutely true.
So they're getting, and again, it's hard to tell which of those would have come to the ER and which wouldn't. But you sort of know that when you do that, some of your ER is going to migrate to the clinic where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, sometimes people go to the clinic and they see the doctor on Saturday and they say, you need to go to the ER.
And we did that yesterday. I mean, we do it. We do that. We did that yesterday. It happens every day.
Absolutely. Ambulance runs, 2/3 were responded to, or had patients. 1/3, as always.
Dry runs.
It's a dry run, but there's a cost involved. Balance sheet solid.
Solid.
Income statement solid. Because I know you're getting.
No,
ready.
I'm sorry.
No. I just we just continue to try and remind people that you can't grow too quick. A tree takes a long time to grow, and it grows steadily, and that's what you want to have.
And if it grows too quick, it'll fall over because it won't have roots to support it.
That's right, and that's why I'm saying everything here is on a nice incline, and just like you were talking about, it's steady.
Yeah.
Steady.
And back to when I was saying, I was crowing about we're at 5 months positive. There's going to be months when we're not.
Oh, absolutely.
So again, it's not a straight line from where we were to where we need to be. There's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows between here and there.
But when I looked through it very quickly, I thought that is really a nice, consistent operating statement.
Yep.
When you look at the balance sheet, it's steady. It's steady. Everything just looks in proportion. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
I tip my cap to the hospital for really looking at different things to make sure that they stay within. Stay in your lane, bro. Right?
Yep.
And that's what we're doing. Very good. 340B pharmacy plan. Tell us a little.
So 340B, as we had a sort of a discussion about that. That was a big part of the revenue that we depended on, and the pharmaceutical companies have hated it since it first started.
Yep.
And so they have been battling it. And so a lot of what you're seeing in a loss there is changes that have been made by the pharmaceutical industries lobbying the government to make that go down. So you'll notice that our distribution at the pharmacies have changed because that was an intent from the pharmacies, and so everybody is seeing 340B revenue drop. But if you will look at that, there's about $370,000 that we are less this year than last year. That is cash that we don't have that we had last year.
Wow.
And we are still improving ourselves. So against that kind of headwind, they're still making improvements in the hospital.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Cash on hand went down a little bit in a month. It happens. You got cash.
So the board has been concerned about AP.
Right.
So when you push AP down,
Right.
cash on hand goes down. That's a trade-off that you're going to make right now. Now, my belief is that with the budget that we were preparing to bring to the board, I think that we will be able to not only will we be able to cash flow, but we would like to be able to put another $1 million or so in our cash reserves that will make us a little better, and then we can start doing some of the capital improvements out of cash reserves and not affect it, and that will drive our cash on hand up.
But your chart on the cash burn update shows exactly what's happening here. You get a big burst of money, you have to pay bills, and it's
you have a payroll week, you have not a payroll week,
and it really should be very obvious to them what's going on. And I grant you, everybody wants to have more cash on hand, absolutely. But if you get to, let's just say, right before the board meeting or at the end of that month, you got a major expenditure to pay, and you got a big bunch of money coming in the next day, it's not reported.
Nope, and it changes moment by moment, and I will tell you that right now the payers are not excited about paying us, so they're being slow to pay. So,
well, what insurance company, what people are excited to give somebody money anymore?
So they're being slow to pay, and they have more than we do.
Yes, they do.
A lot more.
Yes,
than we
they
do.
do. Yes, they do. And I noticed a monthly cash burn trending, and as you mentioned, that incline, but when you look at the chart, again, how it can fluctuate.
Yeah,
month
it's like
by
my
month.
EEGs sort of all over the map.
Big burst, little big. But anyway, still very consistent. If you look at it over the long term, if you look at it week to week, like we've talked about before, you can get scared to death one week, and the next week you're partying.
Yeah.
And then you look at the month cash burn, and then you feel a little bit better, but still we could do better than that. When you start looking at 6 months, you get a little bit better.
So we started. So back when RHG came in to help with the facility, we watched from that time cash burn because for a whole lot of reasons we were watching cash burn pretty consistently. Since January, that trend turned and we started to see cash growth. Now, and part of that was because we were coming through the thick of the year, but that cash burn other slide also included some that just come through the thick of the year. So the fact that we were growing cash during the first half of this year is pretty is a compliment to what's happening in the hospital and what the staff is doing. They're doing a great job. So we're growing that cash back, and again, that's to get you through the lean time.
Absolutely. That's
to
do
get
it
you
for.
through the lean time. And, the lean time is sort of right on us.
And anybody who's running a business, Wayne knows there's going to be lean times. You better be prepared.
If you're in retail, you pray for Christmas so that it gets you through the rest of the year.
Well, they used to call it rainy day funds, and rainy day funds means there's nobody going to be outside. If I got an outdoor business, I got a rainy day fund because I need to still pay the bills. The electric still has to be paid. Everything still has to be paid. They don't
Insurance still got to be paid.
Right. They don't give you a day off because it rained.
Yep.
They don't give you a day off because, oh, I'm sorry, you got a snow day, and I'm sorry nobody can get to the hospital. You still have to pay the bills.
Yep.
Well, doesn't make any
And
difference.
interestingly, some of those things that cause that actually cause increase
Cause it
in
to go
cost.
up, yeah.
It gets more expensive because you got to pay somebody to come out and move the snow around. You got to put salt on the roads.
Super
You do all
cold.
the
They leave a door open, and next thing you know,
stuff.
your
Utilities
heating-
go up,
yeah.
everything, and then you're not building revenue. So
No.
you have to be able to balance all those
Well,
things out.
Been doing that for 40 years.
Me too.
I know exactly what you're talking about. All right, Chief Nursing Officer report. We do have some vacancies.
And those are, and I will say, knock on wood, that most of those right now are sort of in line with what the industry, actually better than what the industry is going through. So I will say that we're in a better space than a lot of folks are. But that's going to be a challenge for the next however long we stay in healthcare.
Right, and I just heard on Missouri Net today they're trying to pass a law to help rural hospitals get through. Make them surgical centers or maybe make them emergency center.
Yeah,
that help them keep open. Because right now it's tough.
It's tough, and what that would do is so we're trying really hard not to do the rural health emergency center because that would essentially leave us with a clinic and an ER.
Right.
And we want to be able to continue to have all the other ancillary services that we have here, including the inpatient beds, swing beds. We want to be a hospital.
Right, but there's a lot of areas off to our southeast that have nothing.
They have nothing.
There's nothing out there. So
Nothing.
that's really bad. And I mean, there was about a report about a week ago about the turnover in the hospital. MHA put a report out, and
It's frightening.
it's how many different people have turned over in the last 4 years? It's amazing to me. And then we're talking like 70-something% of either they've moved jobs within the hospital or they've left the medical business altogether.
Well,
health business.
I will tell you that one of the unsung catastrophes of the COVID pandemic was the number of seasoned nurses that I know who had 5 or 6 years left in their career who just said, no, I can't do it, and they left. So we lost all that experience, we lost all that manpower, we lost all of that education, we lost all of that support, and that's never coming back.
No.
So we just lost it. So ordinarily, you would hope that there would be sort of a gradual backfilling as that goes out, and it just fell off. And I don't know how we're going to, as an industry, recover from that kind of intellect loss. It's awful, and it wasn't just in nursing.
No,
but
it's
the
everywhere.
the big impact was nursing.
And the thing, and I guess a lot of that, though, too, was, Wayne, that a lot of pressure was put on the healthcare system. These people, everybody else is supposed to stay in, not do anything, and the hospital crews, get out there and get them healthy.
Yeah.
Whatever you have to do. We don't care if you stay 24 hours a day. You got to get them healthy.
Well, and then
that's
one of
not
the
right.
things that was, and I actually saw a fellow that was doing this from the long-term care. He was complaining about this, but the rates that came in that we as an industry were having to pay for travel nurses was just astronomically high.
Oh, yes.
Astronomically high. And if you have a hurricane in Florida and you suddenly decide, because you're the last gas station, to charge $100 a gallon, well, that's called price gouging, and you get to pay a fine or go to prison.
Big fine.
But when we tripled the cost of labor during the pandemic, and that was pure profit for some folks. And I'm not complaining about the nurses, because the nurses didn't make that.
Right.
But the travel agency companies did.
Oh, yeah.
So that made that tough. And then we burned those folks out.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of those people think they're going to get that same money. That they've been out of it for a while, they come back, and they're stark realization.
Yep.
Nobody's going to pay them like that anymore.
Nope.
And-
You can't afford it.
No, well, no way you can afford it.
You can't
No,
afford it.
But I mean, but they all think that it's never going to change. Well, COVID, we're going to keep that high money. It's not going to be there.
Well,
Guys,
and there was a lot of hospitals that got a huge infusion of cash that they thought they weren't going to have to pay back, and then in the backside of COVID, they had to pay it back. And that's another thing to note in that slide is that a lot of that during that period of time that you were looking at that cash flow, we were paying back about $1.8 million to Medicare. And so we're now behind. That's behind us, and so we were digging out of a whole lot of holes all at the same time.
And that was beginning of last year through about, was it September was the last payment? Yeah. So, yeah. Hospital had to, I mean, they went through some tough times, and they're coming out of it. And it's, like I said, right now we're not looking at January through May as a super big bounce here, super big bounce. Nice, slow, steady incline, and just keep it going that way. So anyway, some vacancies. If you're interested in nursing positions, there's a couple of full-time positions available.
And we're always looking for PRN folks.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of nursing recruitment. There's clinicals that are done at our hospital. So if you need education,
we have a young lady who was here going through her orientation in high school. She was doing, and she's now back in pharmacy school. So now she's back, doing some of her intern work in pharmacy school at the hospital. So we're, at long lead time.
Takes a while to get through all your education and get into the medical field.
And some of us are never done.
No, and you learn every day. It doesn't make any difference. Jody of Human Resources update. She does a great job with that. Fantastic. Foundation update.
A quick thing that didn't make it to the board yet, because it just happened yesterday. We hired another lab tech.
Cool.
Coming to us from Lufkin, Texas. So we met her yesterday. And
doesn't have any kind of accent, do they?
Oh, no more than mine. I'm from Texas too.
Some people in Texas draw.
Well, I know how to talk like a Texan.
Well, I'll bet you. I have cousins that are down in Texas. They come up and said, "Rodney, open your mouth, man." He's so used to chewing, Doesn't do it. All right, Foundation lost a real nice person in Ruth Ann Parker. She resigned, but Ruth Ann has been on that, I think, since day one.
Well, and I heard when we were having the conversation that she's tried to do that a couple of times, and they've not let her. I think this time they're finally letting her resign. Salem
Stars, the Dancing with the Salem Stars is going to, that's closer than you think.
So I've been talking about that since I've been here, and it was 2 years away. Now it's much closer.
Now we're months away, So if you would be interested in dancing
or watching.
Well, let's get the answers first. You got to have the answer before you can watch. Contact the administration office. Just give them your name, and they'll get it to the foundation. They'll get in touch with you. That's 729-6626. And then marketing and community relations. We're doing it right now.
There we are.
Sir?
Well, I want to thank you and the folks on the station for the support of the hospital. That market share growth is because people are trusting us what we do. We do good things every day. We do good things every day, and I'm glad that we're here to do it.
And you've got some great people that help.
Phenomenal people here
get you through it, and it's a pleasure to work with them.
Every day.
And all we want to do is make sure that our hospital gets stronger and stronger every single day.
And
whatever we can do to help.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. You can get some coffee to go if you need to, but you need to make your way.
I got to get back. Thank you.
Wayne, appreciate that. Wayne Reed, CEO of the Salem Memorial Hospital. And if you have any questions, you can always call the office, 729-6626. This interview brought to you as a courtesy of Inman Insurance right here in Salem. Keith and the staff down there do a fantastic job. Health insurance, Medicare. If you need business insurance, or if you need maybe some car insurance, maybe it might be there, or home insurance, they can do it all. Your friends at Inman Insurance. Right there by Progressive Ozark Bank. You can drop on by and see them, and easy to find right here in Salem. Here at KSMO Radio, we have our Civic Record coming up very shortly here on KSMO. And we also have no Cardinal baseball today. One of those weird situations where they're going to be off 2 straight days on their way to London, England. So no game today, no game on Friday either. It's kind of weird, but that's the way it's going to work out on this special trip to London, England. So we have a lot of great music, information for you all day long here on KSMO. Thanks for being here.
Are you working way too hard for way too